Hi, we want to welcome you to this webinar. What we're going to focus on is what we call stop swatting. And the reason that we love this topic is because we're passionate about it. And we run into so many situations where companies have used SWOT, or at least the traditional SWOT, and it's put them in bad situations. So we have some ideas that we want to share with you on ways that maybe you'll stop using SWOT or maybe use it in a different way that is much more constructive. So I'm Mary Abazia, and with me is Tom Spitali. We're from Impact Planning Group. And I'm going to start sharing my screen so that you can get a sense of what we're showing here. Tom, do you want to introduce us a little bit?
Yeah, Impact Planning Group is a strategic marketing consultancy. And what Mary and I spend our days doing is helping companies differentiate their products and their portfolios of goods and services using a set of tools and a discipline that helps companies get a lot of smart voices, a lot of collaboration into how they build their marketing, their differentiation, their segmentation, their targeting, and their positioning. So because on a daily basis, Mary and I work with these organizations who are building their plans and trying to optimize their plans and their differentiation, we do see the use of SWOT. And today is about, as Mary said, kind of highlighting some of the dangers of SWOT, and also kind of talking about how, if you absolutely need to use SWOT because it is totally entrenched in some companies, how you might be able to use it and avoid some of the big mistakes that we see that come out of the analysis.
And we are going to provide the tools that we're going to show you throughout. We can send that out, and we can set up a time if you want to actually figure out how to apply it to your business. So let's get into this. What we're going to answer today is, what is a traditional SWOT, and what are some of the drawbacks that we've seen with that? And then how do you create what we're going to call a customer-driven SWOT? So we're going to infuse it with the customer and some other things that you'll see that make it actually a very insightful tool. But throughout, we're going to ask for questions. So first, what is the typical SWOT? What we usually see is that the S and the W, of course, stand for strengths and weaknesses, and then the O and the T stands for opportunities, threats. So S, strengths of the businesses, weaknesses, and then opportunities that the business has, and then threats. So that's what a 4-blocker typically has. And when you see one of these typical SWOTs, they have a laundry list of S, strengths, and some weaknesses, and then a lot of opportunities, a lot of threats. But it's not very prioritized. It's just 4 blocks of this information. So what we want to know is where have you seen this in your company? So, or even with other companies. And I'm going to open up the quiz, and let's see here. Let's open up the quiz, and there we go. Okay. And watch this. So for all of you out there, please let us know where you never, once in a while, frequently, or all the time. Okay. Thank you. It looks like once in a while is typically what we're seeing with this. So some are more frequent, but once in a while is more the majority. So as we continue on here.
Mary, I would like to say, and that's a little bit of the function of our audience. I think, Mary, with the types of industries and businesses that we work in, I would say we probably would say frequently or all the time, would we not?
Yeah, at least the ones we run into, it's we have our SWOT, now we have our strategy. So.
Yeah, and we, by the way, we didn't mention this at the beginning, but we work with big pharmaceutical companies, we work with medical device companies, medical diagnostic companies, really a whole range of organizations, and they tend to be kind of the Fortune 500 size. And I think that if Mary and I are working with a Fortune 500 company and we don't see a SWOT anytime during our engagement or relationship with them, we're actually very surprised. It's very common to see, at least in the circles that we run in.
Yeah, totally agree. So Tom, why don't you talk a little bit about the drawbacks of SWOT?
Okay. So when Mary and I started to realize and see some of the big mistakes that companies were making when they were using SWOT and over relying on SWOT, and Mary's going to talk about one in just a second on the very next slide, we decided to do a little bit of research and find out, where did SWOT come from? How did it originate? And what we found is that it's credited to these two Harvard Business School policy unit professors that you see, George Smith and C. Roland Christensen, during the early 1950s. What we found out was that these guys were specialists in organizational strategy, kind of like taking an internal look and optimizing the structure of an organization. And obviously, SWOT is a very elegant and to some people, very powerful analysis, because here we are, how many years later, 73 years after SWOT was invented, so to speak, and it's still in heavy use in many, many organizations. Here is the problem. Many organizations that we deal with are using SWOT for strategic marketing or product management or anything to differentiate their products in the marketplace. And as we all know, any kind of strategy or marketing requires a significant look, an initial look, a primary basis from the market, the outside market, the customers, the industry that you're operating in. And so we were not surprised to find that this originated from organizational strategy, which is inward looking. And the problems that we see with SWOT when it's used in a marketing context is a lack of that total external and customer focus. And it manifests itself in some pretty significant ways, as Mary's going to tell you about next.
Yeah, one of our good bad stories was a company that makes what we're calling these stents. You can see they're very small, and doctors put them into the human body to open up the arteries. And so this company had a world-class academy that taught doctors how to install this device, if you will. And over time, the fact is that all the doctors were trained on it. They knew how to do the procedure. Yet, because this company was so good at doing it, every year when they went back to say, what are we going to do next year? They'd say, well, we have to invest in our academy again with the same program. And they wasted their resources when they should have been focused a lot more on less invasive procedures, more digital and different types of technology. That's where the industry had gone and where the customer needs were. So they were actually just, it was basically a waste of money and time. So the biggest trap that we see with SWOT, as this is an example, is that you end up doing what you've always done because you're good at it. And you miss the customer needs in there. And maybe even sometimes the competitors have actually leveled up to you. So it's no longer a strength. You're doing it maybe well, but it isn't anything that differentiates you. And it's something you need to find something new to really make sure you're appealing to your customers. And the same goes with your weaknesses. So
Mary, it's a provocative question to say, is a strength really a strength if it doesn't match with a customer need?
Yeah. Does the tree fall in the forest? Yeah, exactly. So this is our enhancements. If we could, enhance what a SWOT is, this is how we would inject what Tom was saying earlier about the customer. So for the strengths and weaknesses, if you did it first through the customer's eyes, and then second relative to their other options. And then the third thing is bring in trends so that you're able to really look at the winds of change in a much better and prioritized way. So this is what we're going to show you how to do. So Tom, you're going to take them through how to do a customer-driven SWOT.
Yes. So really the model looks like this. And what Mary and I find, if you want to build it out, Mary, that's fine. There's a lot of companies that are not going to get rid of SWOT. It's going to be something that the organization is going to continue to ask its strategic marketers, its strategists, its product managers to do. That's fine. We're not advocating that you go try to kill SWOT at your company. What we really want to do is show you a couple of additional tools that Mary and I have found are really good to suffuse a SWOT analysis with, so that you are definitely looking at customer needs and the competitors. And so what I'm going to do is break it down. First, going to look at a tool that will help you to understand strengths and weaknesses, again, through the customer's eyes relative to their options. And then we're going to look at opportunities and threats with another tool that we have found very useful. And we're going to try to do that on the backs of some really interesting case studies to make it interesting. So, Mary, if you'd like to go to the next slide, let's start talking about how you do a customer-focused strength and weakness analysis. And let's illustrate it with one of the most colossal failures in recent business history. This is a picture of the Volkswagen Phaeton. The Volkswagen Phaeton was Volkswagen's entree into the luxury car business. This is an ad for the Phaeton. And this particular product launch was a total abject failure. Volkswagen decided they were going to get into the luxury market, and they had a plan to launch this vehicle in the North American market, and their first year sales target was 10,000 cars. They sold 800 and basically pulled out of the market after millions and millions of dollars in creating a factory to build it and all the investment that goes into launching a new brand. Now, if you were able to spend some time and read this ad, you would probably find a lot of clues as to why this product failed. But because we have limited time, let's cut to the chase. The real problem with this particular brand was staring you right in the face. It was the brand. You see, Volkswagen thought that its brand, and they plastered it right in the middle of the back of this car, would appeal to luxury car buyers, especially because the car was so well engineered. But the fact of the matter is, luxury car buyers care about status. They care about the statement that a particular car makes. And the Volkswagen logo in the actual translation of Volkswagen is the people's car. And what happened with this brand is, after it failed, this vehicle failed in the North American marketplace, they did some post-launch research to try to figure out why the brand failed. And they came up with a representative quote about the Volkswagen Phaeton that came from people who they knew had considered the car and didn't buy it. And a lot of times in market research, you have these representative quotes that take a lot of data and boil it down into one quote that tells the whole story. The representative quote for this was, "I didn't buy the Phaeton because I didn't want my neighbors to think I couldn't afford a BMW." That was behind the failure of this brand. So we want to show you how a particular tool called the ability to compete would have allowed Volkswagen to understand the problems with this launch prior to the launch and maybe make some adjustments, or maybe not launch the brand at all. See, on a standard strength, weakness, opportunity, threat kind of analysis, Volkswagen clearly, under the strength category, had their brand and their brand image listed as a strength. And when it shows up on that kind of analysis and goes into your strategic documents, you probably don't think any more of it. You don't think, you don't ask the questions, is our brand strong enough? This particular analysis, which we call the ability to compete, has several components to it that keeps you away from making those mistakes. What happens with this analysis is, in the first column, you see something that Mary and I call benefits sought. It is the prioritized set of benefits that a buyer of this product, whether it be a medical device or a car or a pharmaceutical, what they want. And the benefit weight in the next column over tells you how strongly they consider that benefit in relation to the other benefits that they also deem as important. Then you have a column that's called the critical capabilities. These are the assets and skills that any organization needs to be able to deliver on the benefit. And you have some weighting factors there that show how important those critical capabilities are. And then finally, you've got this rating of 1 to 10, where through customer research, you can find out how a customer thinks you fulfill that particular benefit or that critical capability, with a high number like an 8 or a 9, meaning they think you're really great, and a low number meaning like a 1 or 2, meaning that you're not really good at delivering on that benefit. So if you take a look at this, you could see that the Phaeton would have a problem. The idea being that status is the #1 benefit sought by a luxury car buyer. And the idea of what are the critical capabilities that deliver on status are things like brand image and ownership perks. And the fact of the matter is, with the VW Phaeton, their brand image for the luxury car buyer was really low. Had they done some kind of analysis here, they would have seen they're not the 8, 9, or 10 that they think of in their traditional SWOT. Brand image is listed as a strength. It's not a strength. It's a weakness in this particular category. And what happens is that they go into a market where they're trying to sell against companies like Lexus, who, for example, separated their brand completely from the Toyota brand and had great success with it. And BMW, which has a lot of other strengths. And you can see that by multiplying, doing the simple math of multiplying the ratings times the critical capability weight gives you a score. You can see how you're going to win or not win in the marketplace. And you can see the huge deficit that the Phaeton had. And had they done this analysis, that brand image would not have been listed as a strength. It would have been listed as a weakness on a SWOT analysis. And then they would have had to figure out how they were going to address that. So that's how the ability to compete works. Mary, if you want to click to the next slide, you could use that analysis and suffuse a SWOT analysis with it. Now, a lot of our clients use ability to compete and ditch the SWOT completely. But like I said earlier, maybe your company really needs to use SWOT. It's really entrenched in your organization. Using the ability to compete, you can pull over the proper strengths and weaknesses. For example, with the strengths, amenities and design engineering for Phaeton, if you toggle back, Mary, to the ability to compete, you can see that amenities and design engineering were both pretty well rated. I mean, Volkswagen built a really nice luxury car. Everybody that drove it thought it was really, really good, that it performed really, really good. So that was not the problem. But you can see that brand image. And if you go down there, the classy dealerships, you can see that people, when they buy a luxury car, want a classy dealership experience. And both BMW and Lexus deliver on that. The Phaeton, the Volkswagen people put the Phaetons in with all the other Volkswagens in the same dealerships. They didn't even separate them. So when they asked people about that, that was not something that they wanted. The buying experience wasn't what they really expected when they were buying a luxury car. So if you go back to the next slide again, you can see that brand image and classy dealerships were listed, would be listed as weaknesses if an ability to compete analysis had been done. Mary, anything to add to that?
No, keep going.
All right, so that's how you get a customer-focused strength and weakness analysis. Let's look at our opportunities and threats. We think that the key to opportunities and threats and getting those right is a really great trend analysis, a forward-looking trend analysis. So let's show you another interesting case study and show you how one company attacked the particular trend that we're going to talk about here using our toolkit and found a way to take advantage of a trend that threatened another company. Mary and I were working with a medical diagnostic organization, a company that made CT scanners and MRI machines, very expensive machinery. And literally, we're kicking off a meeting and talking about trends when somebody held up the morning's newspaper and said, has anybody seen this latest news that animals, specifically dogs, are being trained to detect cancer? I mean, that's what a CT and an MRI machine does, right? And these dogs were found to be pretty darn accurate with bladder cancer, really, very accurate with breast cancer, and almost infallible with lung cancer. And it was a huge threat to this particular company. They didn't know how they were going to deal with it. I mean, dogs don't cost anywhere near as much as an MRI or a CT scan machine. So what happened was this company kind of flailed away a little bit trying to figure out whether they should, invest in the dogs or use the dogs as an early detection device. And they kind of spun out. They didn't really do anything about this trend of cancer sniffing dogs. But another company looked at it a completely different way, a very customer-centric way. If you go to the next slide, this company saw the trend of cancer sniffing dogs. They were in the medical diagnostic businesses too, but they didn't just kind of take the trend at face value and try to figure out what they were going to do about it. They talked to customers and they said, well, how would you feel about a diagnosis from a dog? And of course, people say, everybody loves dogs, or most people love dogs. They say, well, I like it, but could I trust it? The problem with cancer detecting dogs is, well, they're dogs. And so this particular company started asking questions about, well, what would you like about the experience of cancer sniffing dogs? And how would that be better than the experiences today? And of course, people said the non-invasive nature, I don't have to get inside a machine. I don't have to lay still. I don't have to feel claustrophobic. All I have to do is breathe on a dog. And I like that part of it. I just don't know if I can trust the results. And so a company called Metabolomics created a machine that mimicked the less invasive nature of breathing on a cancer sniffing dog, that also had the scientific rigor that people would expect in an FDA approved machine that can accurately detect cancer. And they really did very well, of course, with this particular machine, while the company that spun out really did nothing and lost some market share to this machine because of the less invasive nature of it. So what would you do with this? How would you really both figure out in your opportunity and threat analysis that this was coming? And how would you determine whether it really was an opportunity or a threat in a way that moves your company's strategy forward? Let's look at a tool. This is a multi-part tool that I'm going to show you here. But basically, it starts with a brainstorm. And a lot of companies do this with a brainstorm around an acronym we call PESTLE. And then you can see that the PESTLE, each letter of the PESTLE stands for a different kind of trend in the marketplace. And what companies do that use this particular tool, and a lot of companies do, as I said before, is they take each category one at a time. And they think about what are the trends, things that could happen in each of these spaces that could affect our business both positively and negatively. And what Mary and I found is by throwing the PESTLE over top of your business and using it, if you get enough minds thinking about these particular types of trends, the right people in the room, you could probably find 80 to 90% of the things that could happen in your business. You're never going to be 100% sure. But you can find that by looking at PESTLE. We just are showing one particular trend from each of these categories, but typically you'd have 5, 6 for each category. And, the question becomes, okay, if we don't think we've missed any, or we think we've got 80 to 90% of the trends covered, which ones do we pay attention to? And so by taking those trends and maybe even calling down the universe a little bit, maybe if you have 40 or 50 trends, you should do a first cut and say, what are the 8, 9, or 10 that really matter? We've got 6 here just to be simple and show you, a full case study. But The idea would be to take those trends, which you see in the upper right-hand corner, and to rate them for how probable they are to occur and how impactful they would be in that business if they were to occur. And you see things in the upper right-hand corner like high inflation rates, right? Limiting hospital budgets as a trend that could vastly impact a business like MRI and CT scan businesses, you know? And we know inflation is going on. And so anything that's in the upper right-hand quadrant of this this particular type of analysis is something that you absolutely should be acting on. Your strategy should be addressing this. But the really interesting ones that Mary and I find are often in that upper left-hand corner, the things that you're not quite sure are going to happen. But if they did happen, they would be quite impactful in your business. And it's really important to take some time to consider what should happen here. And that's actually what Metabolomics did, because they found this idea of some kind of less invasive diagnostic option for customers to be something they weren't sure was going to happen, but they knew that anything less invasive than the standard is always going to be really impactful and have a high impact. So what did they do? Well, they didn't stop here. What you've got to do with any trend and opportunity is, if you stop there, it might be just viewed as a threat. But by asking yourself, what is this trend going to mean to customers and stakeholders, and then what we can do about it, brings this whole analysis full circle. You started with the pestle, you got the brainstorm, you got all the trends, you rated them, you figured out the ones that really matter, and then the ones that really matter, the ones that you should plan for, you say, what are the implications to customers and stakeholders? So we've brought that less invasive trend, that animal instincts, animal detecting cancer trend over, and the Metabolomics asked themselves, what are the implications? And the implications were to customers and stakeholders. Customers love less invasiveness, but they might not trust an animal diagnostic. So the implication was, well, we've got the critical capabilities as an organization to create diagnostic machines. We think we can make something that's less invasive, that mimics what people like about cancer sniffing dogs, but give it the scientific rigor of an FDA-approved machine. And that's exactly what they did. And so if you go to the final slide that I'm going to present before I turn it back to Mary, because it seems like I've been talking for a long time, you see the opportunities and the threats, and how you can use the trend analysis and the tools that I just showed you to make sure that your opportunities and threats reflect that broad view of the marketplace, of course, the things that your company really thinks are most important to address, and looking at it through the eyes of the customer can allow you to say, is this simply a threat, less invasive technology, or do we have an opportunity to turn that threat into that threat of less invasive technology into something that allows us to capture the market? And that's listed over there on the opportunity.
Yeah, I want to add that what Tom was saying is, I don't think you can really land here unless you have gone through the eyes of the customer. A lot of companies do trend analysis, and sometimes they link it to their SWOT, but we rarely see that they take this journey through the so what before they get to what are we going to do to solve it. So this is another trick, but it's an important part of this process and this set of tools. So as you can see now, you know how to do both the top part, which is the strengths and weaknesses, when you go through the eyes of the customer and look at, and it's not even who are the other competitors, it's what are their other options. And sometimes that's do nothing. Sometimes we see in categories that do nothing is the biggest competitor. That has to be part of this analysis, or do it myself. And then the opportunities and threats, Tom just took you through some pretty basic tools that are very robust, that get to the trends, and then how to prioritize them so you don't focus on a lot of stuff, but a few things. So the roadmap that we recommend when you're going to do a customer focus SWOT is to do this ability to win, because it's through the eyes of the customer that you really identify strengths and weaknesses. And then when you do the bottom part, the opportunities and threats, that's where you do the pestle, and then you prioritize all the things you came up with, and then you say, so what? And you come up with some ideas there that land also in your SWOT. So hopefully it's straightforward. It's not easy, but it's straightforward. And we are going to make sure to send this out to you. Tom, you had one more thing to say about how you get the customer's view here.
Yeah, I think a big question on a lot of people's minds is we talk about getting the customer's view is how do you get an accurate view of what customers want and what their needs are. And fact is that Mary and I work with a lot of B2B companies that oftentimes don't have a huge budget for market research. Of course, market research is the answer, right? If you can fund market research studies into customer needs, you can do that. But there's a lot of times that businesses say, is there a quick and dirty way that I can do a better job of finding out what customer needs are? Because that ability to compete starts with a list of customer needs. And of course, we need to understand how customers think to do the translation of the trends as well. We've got a video that if you just go to YouTube and search for the Vietnam card sort, it's our most popular piece of content ever, thousands of views, where we show a very simple method for how, if you don't have a lot of money, you can find out what customers really want. In the high level principles of this, I won't go into detail. Go to YouTube if you want to see it. But when you ask customers what they want, that open-ended question, you get a blank stare back, and they don't really know how to answer that question. What are your needs? What are your wants? What are you seeking? A lot of times they just don't know how to answer that question. And what they do is they go to the default answer, which is, I just want lower price or faster delivery or things that we call cabbage, don't give you any real insight. So the idea with the Vietnam card sort is you go in with the hypothesis of what they want and let them change the hypothesis. What we have found is when you give customers an idea of some things that maybe they think other customers have mentioned to you, or some things that, just give them thought starters, they're really willing to tell you what doesn't work about their hypothesis, what your hypothesis and what you've missed, and also kind of the priority order of those needs. And so that Vietnam card sort is a really good methodology that allows you to do that on a low budget and make sure that, you get the most important part of all of this talk right, which is understanding what customers want and need.
Yeah. So next steps are we are sending out these templates and the recording to anyone that wants it. And then we would love to hear, what you're using SWOT for. If you want to change the way you're using that analysis, we're here for you. So again, thank you so much for joining us today.